Black, Indigenous, or women of color. We must do better. We have made a commitment to increasing this percentage to showcase the amazing work and ideas that BIPOC women bring to the fields of design. Change starts within, and so we are asking, as we ask others to make change, we have to do that same change ourselves. Today, we continue to expand our programming by welcoming our BIPOC community to the virtual stage to share their successes and triumphs. With that, I'd like to welcome Wisco NOMA leadership, Marion Clendenen-Acosta, to the mic per se. So welcome, Marion.
Well, thanks, Mo, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for sharing that context, Mo. That was good information to have as, as a background. So Marion Clendenen-Acosta, President Wisco NOMA. On behalf of Wisco NOMA, I'd like to thank Women in Design for inviting us to be a part of this collaboration. So just to share a little bit about Wisco NOMA, when our chapter was established in 2019, it was important for us to create a space where open communication and fellowship among minority architects in Wisconsin could be fostered. Our mission is to provide a solid foundation on which our members are empowered to promote justice and equity in communities of color through outreach, professional development, design excellence, and community advocacy. A few of our chapter program includes providing support, development, and resources to UWM NOMAs. We've been doing outreach presentations with Stewart Elementary students, connecting real life experience with their IB curriculum. We're collaborating on a Pan-African Museum exhibition in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We're also in the process of developing a scholarship fund for students. We're working with victims of police brutality. And we have the DEI challenge that we developed in collaboration with AIA Wisconsin. The DEI challenge presents an opportunity to mitigate the inequity caused by not having diverse voices at the table within the community and in the profession. The goal of the DEI challenge is to build on macro changes by honing in on specific details that firms should implement to empower Black and underrepresented people in the profession with opportunities for equity and inclusion. So as you can see, we have a lot going on at Wisco NOMA. If you'd like to learn more or to get involved, I encourage you to reach out to us at wisconoma.com. With that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Marion and Mo, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making time to join us today. My name is Teonna Gupta, and I'm one of the hosts for the evening today. I'm a committee member of Women in Design and Wisco NOMA and a project designer at Growth Design Group. I am really honored to be a part of both of these organizations that are dedicated to advocating diversity, equity, and inclusion in the design profession. With that in mind, the theme of our evening tonight is Making My Mark. Each presenter has used their voice and ideas to create a slide deck of 20 slides with 20 seconds for each slide to present their story on this topic. We hope that their stories tonight will inspire and empower each one of you to leave a positive mark on the world. Some general information before we get started. To get the most out of this presentation, we recommend you set up your Zoom screen to speaker view, which would allow you to view the slides and the speaker at the same time. Also, I wanted to mention we will not be taking questions during the presentations, but you're welcome to post your questions or comments in the chat. And at the end of the event, you will have a chance to network in randomized breakout rooms with the presenters. Now, without further ado, we will get started.
Hello, my name is Emma Price, and I will be one of your hosts for the evening. I'm a committee member of the Women in Design Milwaukee chapter and an architectural consultant and Inspec Incorporated. One moment. Our first presenter tonight is going to be Marion Clendenen-Acosta. Marion Clendenen-Acosta is an associate principal at Kahler Slater in their Milwaukee office. She's an architect and a project manager with 30 years of experience working on corporate, higher education, and healthcare projects. Marion currently serves as the president of the Wisconsin chapter of NOMA, Wisco NOMA, and is the philanthropy director with Executive Women of International Milwaukee chapter. She also served as a City of Milwaukee Historic Preservation Commissioner from 2013 to 2020. As an avid soccer mom, Marion also loves the creative arts, sewing, gardening, and just listening to the rain. And then Marion, you can start then.
Thank you. When I first thought about the topic of making my mark, I was surprised that it was more difficult than I thought it would be to define or to pinpoint. As a creative with a passion for fabrics and textiles, the concept of a tapestry provided me with an avenue to be able to express my thoughts in a holistic way. Tapestry is defined as a piece of thick textile fabric with pictures or designs formed by weaving colored weft threads. It is also used in reference to an intricate or complex combination of things or sequence of events, i.e. a tapestry of cultures, races, and customs. My life tapestry and accomplishments are an interconnected series of evolving experiences. My life journey and marks can be defined by four main interwoven threads: culture on its many levels, career, creativity, and community. I was born on the island of St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands has a rich cultural heritage and diverse population. Growing up in an environment where the teachers, entrepreneurs, and government leaders were predominantly Black gave me a strong sense of pride in self, family, and community. Learning from my parents' life has kept me grounded throughout my schooling and career. From my father's organizational skills to his knowledge of history and current events, to my mother's 30 years of steadfast work ethic as she rose in rank to assistant court administrator of the territorial court. The Bobashanti Rastafari culture is an integral part of my way of life. The activism, principles, godheads, and customs of Rastafari advocates for bringing of the Black race to a remembrance of our true history and promise. As an empress, I strive to emulate the virtues of Proverbs 31. My husband, Ras Mwambe, is my balance, my thought provoker, and #1 encourager. As a family, we work together, understanding the responsibility we have to uplift our community and pave the way for our children and future generations by first strengthening ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Keeping of the Sabbath is a time for study, reflection, and rest. In our creed, we pray, let the hungry be fed, the naked clothed, the sick nourished, the aged protected, and the infants cared for. All principles which have influenced the evolution of my approach to career, creativity, and community. My passion for architecture began in high school when researching Mayan pyramids. At 16, I started college at Carroll before transferring to UW-Milwaukee, where I received my degree in architecture. Years later, coming full circle, I traveled with SARUP's Mexico program and had the amazing experience of climbing to the top of a pyramid. I began my career at Slater in 1991, and for the first 10 years, I worked on projects for a variety of corporate and higher education clients. In 2000, I passed my last ARE exam, becoming the first African-American female to be licensed in the state of Wisconsin. Also around that time, I transitioned to a healthcare focus, and I'm now a project manager with over 20 years of experience, managing projects ranging from replacement hospitals and women's centers to carefully coordinated and technical building additions and interior renovations. My love for creative expression is intertwined not only in my professional career, but also in my personal life. From 1990 to 2000, I was a company member and soloist with City Ballet Theater, a contemporary modern dance company. As part of what now seems to be a natural progression, I was able to combine my love for telling a story through dance, textiles, sewing, and fashion design into the role of costume designer. My first client was CBT, but quickly expanded to include a number of local performing arts schools, dance, and theater groups. It's very important to me to teach our youth that they can take an idea, develop it, and manifest it with their own hands. And in doing so, they have the ability to make an impact. With my sewing, I've been able to clothe ones for their joyous occasions, their spiritual services, as well as support activism. Being of service in the community is another thread that plays a major role in my culture and life. By strengthening relationships and human connections, we build trust, empathy, understanding, and the opportunity to work together for a common and greater good. My community mark is definitely a family affair. During the summers, we grow vegetables and herbs and share the harvest with extended family, friends, and neighbors. Last year, through the Love Your Block Milwaukee program, we made and donated over 600 cloth face masks to senior centers, women's services, health and wellness, and youth organizations. We've also supported Kahler Slater's annual holiday giving. We started with sewing hats and scarves in 2010, then progressed to personal care kits, which were donated to local organizations. In 2017, KS collaborated with my daughter's senior class at Rufus King to sew and donate 150 kits to youth centers and senior centers in St. Croix after Hurricane Maria. Throughout my career, I've been involved with mentoring students as well as building awareness of the architectural field. As president of Wisco NOMA, my aim is to help amplify the voices of all of our members, and I've worked to establish connections to expand our outreach, not only locally, but also to the Caribbean and Africa. As I step back and look at the communal tapestry that is my life, I recognize that the threads of experiences and connections have interwoven to give beautiful shape to the legacy that I'm a part of. I see these experiences as building blocks in preparation for the next evolution, because there is more work to be done, as my part of the tapestry is not yet finished. There are gaps and loose threads, and I am fine with that, as I am still learning and growing. What I do know is that I have a solid foundation, and as I continue to grow in my spiritual development, it will provide the key to unlock the next level of making my mark in my culture and broader community. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Marion. Your story of creativity and community work truly demonstrates how each aspect of our lives is connected in creating this exciting and ever-changing world. As a side note, I want to add that working with you on the Wisco NOMA team, I've seen firsthand the hard work you and the other team members are putting in to advocate for change in our profession, and I want to thank you for that. Our next presenter is Wekeana Lassiter. In addition to working as a designer at a Madison-based firm, being the vice president of the Wisconsin chapter of NOMA, Wekeana is also an adjunct professor at UWM School of Architecture because she truly believes in the importance of knowledge sharing and mentorship. What started out as a whimsical exploration of form, function, and aesthetics in a game called The Sims is now her career. Somewhat different than what she anticipated at the ripe age of 11, building, design, and architecture has filled her mind with awe and wonder. The physical feats that humans are able to accomplish, but more than that, how something so large as a city and something so small as a studio apartment can start with something so intangible as an idea. As architects, we are allowed to dream, but we are also expected to transform those dreams into reality. We are the conduit between dreams and reality. That is what guides Wekeana.
I could imagine one day when I'm old and gray to sit with the child on my knee who'd ask me to tell them a tale so different they'd never heard or seen. I would stand at the bookcase with so many to choose, but one story catches my eye. So I pull out the tome and join the young soul with the tale that is so close to home. The tale of the creationist, the boundless chemistry of imagination and creation. Once upon a time, there was a girl who had a gift, as is common for most of these tales. Her gift was that of expansive imagination, not too uncommon for legends and myths. What was unique, however, was her ability to blend these thoughts with imagination. Connecting, combining, stretching, and testing, untainted by societal limitation. Her mind was truly vast and expansive, like a great old tree's stretching branches, constantly reaching, no fear of limitation, an opportunity of mental liberation, putting chaos through chemical transformation and turning it into tangible manifestations. She created with sound and word, emotion and heart. She spoke and she wrote. She drew and she'd float to the highs of her thoughts and the lowest of boats. She thought and transformed and thought it. Until one day she proclaimed she was a creative conduit. If she was the link between thought and reality, what were the odds and probability of her present being an amalgamation of her deepest desires of manifestation over the hand of someone else's imagination, but rather a product of her own creation? With this thinking, it would seem that all of this would ultimately mean that the darkest of darks and the lightest of hearts, the harmonious connection and division of parts, suggests of her own life she's created, you see? So whatever she wanted, she knew she could be. This here was the birth of the creative creationist. So she held the title with pride and graciousness. One day, our little creative creationist was out chewing a big thought, collecting ingredients for her deep mental plot, when she came upon a squirrely little white rabbit whose foot was tapping rapidly. What a very strange habit. Well, hurry up then, we're going to be late. Late for a very important date. Just to make sure that the creature was talking to her, she looked over her shoulder, but nothing else was astir. But I wasn't even expecting. We must not be late, interrupted the nervous rabbit. The rules are quite clear. We must stay on schedule, and to budget we must adhere. Budget? Yes, now come on then. I said we were late. Must I say it again? The rabbit hopped off in a frantic sort of way, with the curious girl bounding after. It stopped abruptly at what she saw was a hole and jumped in with what she thought was laughter. Curiously, she looked in after the rabbit, wondering, pondering the possibilities of it. Little rabbit, she called, I've so much to ask. What are you proposing? I know not of the task. Out popped the rabbit with a curious smirk. There it paced to and fro, its little mind at work. Since you've no haste for our important date, the one we will rush for only to wait, I will tell you this that might soothe your mind, a hint at what in that hole you will find. Answers to questions, questions with no answers, thought to form reality of spatially conscious mad catastrophe, a play of form and functionality that meet the force of wind and gravity. There is so much more that I could say, but time is up and you have to decide to come or to stay. Waiting on the edge of that hole gazing down, a hope and a dream, her mind was unbound. It raced onward, but on the outside you wouldn't have known that the seed in her head and her heart had been sown. On the cusp of this critical moment so deep, she held her breath, closed her eyes, and took the plummeting leap. Well, what happened to the little girl with the gift to create when she jumped after the rabbit who was frantic and late? I would look down at that child, the one on my knee, with a soft and knowing smile as they looked up at me. I would kiss their head and say real gently, my dear child, that is the end of the tale. For you see, the tale of our gifted little girl who leapt continues on in book 2, they say, written while she slept. There is something, dear one, that you must know about these tales, the ones that begin with a wish or a being. Some stories are complete, some are being lived, and some have yet to be dreamt or be seen. With an infinite end, as vast as the beginning, When you read, you take the plummeting leap. Until then, I bid you the sweetest of dreams of creating while you sleep. Before you go, I will say this. The ultimate lesson is, if you were blessed with the gift, then be free of the mold. Your empowering story is waiting yet to be told. Thank you.
Thank you, Wekeana. What an inspiring story. Your presentation showcased what we can accomplish with a little bit of imagination and drive. Our next presenter is Ellen Wagner. Ellen Wagner was born and raised in St. Louis. She moved to Atlanta shortly after her high school graduation to attend Clark Atlanta University and majored in fashion design and merchandising, and then went to study art direction at the Creative Circus. Ellen started her design career in the fashion industry as a visual merchandiser. The skills she learned in fashion helped shape her into the creative she is today. Her superpower, as she likes to think of it, is getting what needs to be done by any means necessary. With the additional skills she acquired in the fashion world, she's been able to do just that. Ellen has over 15 years of experience working in advertising as a designer, art director, and creative director. Before moving to Milwaukee, Ellen lived and worked in New York, California, and Germany, crafting creative for iconic brands such as Foot Locker, Nike, Adidas, Healthy Choice, Dove Chocolate, Twix, and Kraft. She recently relaunched her sustainable fashion brand, Eldenwa Designs, and is currently working as a freelance creative director with various small businesses in the Milwaukee area. So then here is Ellen.
Hello. Let me just start by saying it's really cool to have a platform like this to share our stories, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Ellen Wagner, and I would like to share with you a little bit about my journey as a creative director and sustainable fashion designer. Ever since I was a little girl, I knew I would do something creative with my life. I come from a long line of creative women working in all sorts of creative spaces. Beauticians, teachers, singers, makers, and they all were such a really huge influence in my daily life. I have so many fond memories sitting and watching my mom whip up an entire outfit out of the blue because she didn't like what she had in mind to wear. No pattern, just raw talent. It was like magic. We would spend hours in her favorite vintage shop trying on clothes. There was so much inspiration. And I had no idea that I was being introduced to sustainable fashion, or even that this was going to be a thing in the future, and that it would become a major movement in fashion. So once it was time to plan for college, I knew I wanted to go to school for fashion. I attended Clark-Atlanta University, and I was so ready to live my different world, Denise from the Cosby Show, college life, and I was here for it. Shortly after college and art school, I moved to New York and started my career in advertising. And this is where I had my first real connection with creating my own unique designs. And when I realized what I was creating was a real opportunity for me to create a brand. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was summertime in New York, the time where everyone fell in love with the city again after a brutal winter. And it was time to head to Brooklyn for the Mermaid Parade. And I wanted to create something unique to wear with my swimsuit when I hung out on the boardwalk. I got so many compliments. I thought, why not turn this into a business and make more for other people? And before I knew it, Eldenwa Designs was born. Who knew that there were so many things that could be made out of an unwanted t-shirt? I started coming up with designs left and right. I mean, I was dreaming about them. With scarves, earrings, bracelets, bow ties, belts, dresses, hats. My fingers couldn't move fast enough. At the time, I knew that I would need more exposure for what I was doing. There was no doubt that the more people that I knew that I could get to see my designs, the more I knew that I could get people to fall in love with them. So I started doing shows all over, from New York to LA. And then in the middle of this new beginning, my partner and I decided that we wanted to start a family. And this was going to be a really exciting time, and extremely nerve-wracking at the same time. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. Shortly after we had our little girl, we got an opportunity to move abroad to Germany. I took this time to really bond with my daughter, and to soak up as much of German culture as I could. It was truly a once in a lifetime experience, and I felt so blessed to be able to spend that much time with her. After Germany, we had a huge move to Milwaukee after my partner accepted a position at Marquette Youth. I went back to work in advertising as a lead creator at the boutique agency called NKR, where I helped create brand campaigns for companies like Mbilinyi Homes and Waukesha Water Utility. This transition back into the ad world totally made sense and gave me security, but it didn't totally feed my soul. I knew I had to figure out what was going to give me the balance I needed and what was going to give me purpose. Fast forward to a handful of years in Milwaukee, my daughter and now son are no longer babies, and the world has turned completely upside down. In this last year, if we haven't learned anything, what I've learned is that tomorrow is not promised to anyone, and we need to make the most of every day. At the end of last year, I was laid off of my full-time gig because of budget cuts. And when I was told the news, I had a huge sigh of relief, and I felt like a huge weight had been lifted. The universe had spoken. I needed to find a way to bring both my worlds together, fashion and marketing, and make it work for me. I started working with small companies and independent contractors. And it gave me the opportunity and the space to be able to, at the same time, work on my own brand and relaunch Eldenwa Designs. I recently partnered with Sustainable Fashion Week out of New York as a creative consultant to help with the mission and spreading the word about slow fashion and the art of repurposed upcycled designs. And all of this have given me a great sense of purpose. It's also opened my mind to all the things that I can create, from things that are deemed worthless, plus doing my part to help the planet. And quiet as it's kept, it also totally speaks to my MacGyver side, and as far as making something out of nothing. So in conclusion, no matter what your journey looks like, strive to live in your purpose, and no matter what, do what you love and love what you do, because we only have one life, and let's make it a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I really enjoyed your presentation, showcasing your creativity in so many different fields, and also demonstrating how we can create beauty in simple ways, and more so in a sustainable way. Thank you again. The next presenter is Sarah Aziz. Sarah Aziz is the 2020-21 Innovation in Design Fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She holds a Bachelor of Architecture from Liverpool John Moores University, a Master in Architecture from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and has taught at the Texas Tech University. Sarah's work explores ways of circumventing existing ineffective modes of information, distribution, and cultural production through fringe research and the creation of temporary discursive spaces.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute honor, and thank you Women in Design Milwaukee and Wisco NOMA for organizing the event, and for all of you for joining me in exploring ways that we all leave marks, whether we're human or non-human, and considering how we can use these marks to some kind of benevolent end. So to do this, I look at tumbleweed, which is a nomadic plant originating from Siberia that was smuggled into America for a number of nefarious reasons. It's created one of the most devastating ecological disasters known to mankind. It's invasive and has exhibited the most rapid spread of any introduced species. And it's an organism that fulfills the final stages of its evolutionary life cycle in death. And you can't talk about the plant without talking about immigration, war, and agriculture. And the work that I've been doing with it seeks to understand how it works. And that's not only botanically, but also in the popular imagination. And the project positions the question of invasive species and who gets to leave marks, not as disasters or places of points of contention, but as displays of the majesty of nature and of life. So at Texas Tech, I work with students to imagine new possibilities for the plant that could bring people together to share knowledge and democratize the practice of architecture to some extent by making free tumbleweed adobe structures that used found object frameworks and also used other ready-made modules such as palettes to consider ways that we can make the building sequence more inclusive through performance and by using free region-specific materials. So during these events, we discuss how the smuggle plant thrived in the Great Plains, and it's in part due to the destructive agricultural practices that remove the topsoil. We discussed how it's synonymous with the American West and a symbol of freedom, westward expansion, and the frontier. And it's an entity that disrupts human interventions in the landscape, from flattening infrastructure to moving against the Jeffersonian grid. And when the pandemic slowed us down, we designed machines that could automate the process for us. So the hypothetical autonomous devices on screens were built to reconnoiter the landscape, taking continuous scans to look for clay-rich soil and tumbleweeds with a certain percentage of seeds on them. And that was with the intention of whatever gets built will sprout, repeat the life cycle, and create new iterations of the structures with little to no human intervention. And we made tumbleweed furniture in Texas and examined how the plants conform to the human body and monitored the ways that the new tumbleweed couches grew in subsequent years. And my student Logan Parker disassembled kitchenware from toasters to blenders and mixers and reverse engineered and adapted them so they'd be capable of blending tumbleweeds, making the adobe and baking them into bricks. Martin Gully, another one of my students, he solicited donations from his grandparents and transformed their items into a roaming adobe painting machine. And what he found was that the absurdity of the object turned it into a new dialogic tool that elicited cross-street conversations that ranged from spaghetti westerns to tumbleweed pickling recipes. As the College of Architecture sat empty, I collaborated with visiting instructor Brendan Shea on a set of automatic tumbleweed drawings. And we tested new material ecologies such as electrostatically charged seeds on plexiglass that traced the movement of our hands as we moved it across the plexiglass. And this led to a series of performances that tested the ways that tumbleweeds are capable of registering human activities. So with Jack Kraft, a West Texas rancher, we worked together to create the Tumbleweed Rodeo. And this was a number of messy drawing events that invited the public to use leaf blowers, dirt, tumbleweeds to control or simulate a natural process, the migration of tumbleweeds. And as the tumbleweeds embarked on their wind-blown journeys across the gallery, their rotative velocities and collisions were recorded onto the surface of the rodeo canvases, and dispersed seeds became embedded in the drawings, creating a lasting archive of the activities that took place in the space. People danced the Texas two-step, they wrangled and enacted scenes from daily life in West Texas. Their actions were recorded onto the surface of the canvases in the form of mud splatters, footsteps, tears, dints, and chips of dried mud that are still lingering in the roof tiles. And we also held a rodeo in Chicago last fall. And people were desperate to interact with dirt, humans, weeds, and all kinds of mess after a long period of sequestration. And the gallery became a safe microcosm that fostered new dialogic practices based on propinquity and empathy that brought people together in the most innately human ways. And the drawings, the marks, were denser than ever. Students such as Caleb Randall tried to find more tangible ways to render visible the human reactions and responses to the marks being made by scripting software that monitored eye movement of rodeo spectators and rodeo participants. And what that led to is where I'm currently at with the project, which is a series of investigations that I'm conducting with an artist and farmer, Eric Simpson, that involves attaching 2 different types of trackers onto the tumbleweeds to understand how they both affect and are affected by the environment in a more measured and nuanced way. So these are pigeon trackers. And what we found is that the tumbleweeds not only add to the surface of the earth, but they extract from it, pulling agricultural debris, insects, food wrappers, and create a system of multi-species entanglements that follow particular vectors of movement set by wind patterns, but altered by built structures. And at UWM, I've been working with student undergraduate research fellows and running tests in Milwaukee, whereas Eric has been running them in Lubbock. And we've both been presented with an overload of information from the GPS trackers, and which allow us to understand how the tumbleweeds navigate and negotiate the built environment. And lastly, we're in the process of exploring multisensory outputs to translate our findings and making them legible to a broader audience, such as planting 10-foot prairie grasses along the paths to attract migratory birds and help facilitate derivatives for humans that ask them to use these marks to move across the landscape in unconventional ways and see the familiar anew. So this is how I register my own marks and think about other people leave them. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Your work is not only exceptional, but it also shows that we need to create spaces with kindness in mind, and how above all, we need to be ethical and responsible designers, a much needed insight into the profession. Our next presenter is Anina Mbilinyi. Anina is first a mother. Anina's passion is playing any role in reducing the inequalities and inequities affecting vulnerable communities across the world. Her #1 priority is to contribute to ending racism in the United States in efforts to spare future children of color from this mental abuse. Anina is a project architect at Flad. At Flad, she has worked in the science and technology and healthcare in an academic studio. The majority of her experience in architecture is research lab. Anina champions sustainability and is in the sustainability group at Flad Architects. Her current focus is social justice, environmental justice, and climate justice. So here is Anina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anina Mbilinyi. Since I was little, I liked helping others. I also fell in love with buildings when I was in my single digits. I have struggled since the beginning of my career on how to combine the passion of working with vulnerable communities and designing buildings. When I thought of leaving my mark, I started thinking about what is most important to me. I am most proud of being a mom, and I thought, what legacy can I leave not only for my children, but all future children of color, so they don't continue to be the majority within vulnerable communities. My goal is to leave behind a legacy of humanity. I was born and raised in Dar es Salaam in the United Republic of Tanzania. The city is beautifully designed around the Indian Ocean. My interest in architecture started at a young age, and one of my fondest memories is my dad driving me for hours and even traveling at times to see buildings after he realized how much I loved them. At the age of 15, we moved to Brussels, where I attended high school. I visited many European cities, and my love for architecture intensified after seeing the beautiful architecture and gardens. I then chose to attend a university with an architecture program, but my mom decided a liberal arts education would equip me better in life. Macalester College did not have an architecture program, so I majored in studio art and mathematics. My experience there is irreplaceable because the student body consisted of international students, and the campus culture emphasized service to vulnerable communities. My passion to vulnerable communities grew. I returned to Dar es Salaam for 2 years to see if I love architecture enough to pursue a master's degree. I learned a lot at MD Consultancy Architects. I met with clients, designed their vision, drafted all documents, and supervised construction. I did interior designing, and I also designed furniture and casework for the houses. This was my first experience in architecture. I attended the 3.5-year graduate program at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning in Milwaukee. Although I had phenomenal instructors, I quickly realized everything was based on Western European culture. I started questioning again if this was the right career for me, because I was not working with vulnerable communities. I approached Professor Van Oudenalen from Venezuela to see what we can do to introduce some diversity. And I was part of starting a design studio in Mexico City. We had our first critique with Ricardo Legarreta at his office. The studio was a success and continued over the years. It is a mark I left behind at SARUP. For my thesis, I decided to do something with refugees in Tanzania from the Rwanda genocide of April 1994. After extensive research, I learned that the genocide cycle continued for decades due to a lack of mental healing. My thesis included temporary towns along the river, which are terminated at the water by a permanent healing community center. The center includes therapy spaces, healing through arts and crafts workshops, and housing for those who needed extra help. In 1997, this concept was appreciated by the UN and universities to pursue a PhD, but I wanted to be an architect. I left my mark by starting conversations about temporary towns and healing for refugees. I started working with buildings only again. I had opportunities to work on several architectural building types from K-12 education, churches, and a justice center. Flad architects' work includes medical manufacturing facilities, vivariums, hospitals, research labs for renowned scientists with their teaching facilities. I am leaving my mark by having a role in designing these buildings that function to save lives across the world. As an architect for over 25 years in an industry that is not friendly to diversity, I'm also leaving my mark by paving the way for younger architects as a woman, a mother, a Black person, and a foreigner. I champion sustainability, and I'm part of the sustainability group at Flad Architects. After the Black Lives Matter movement, people, the slides are not moving. Oh, there, sorry. People in the USA are more supportive of social justice on the sustainability front. Environmental justice movement has only become louder. There is a search for change to reduce racism in the US, including corporate America. I'm finally seeing that my career is tying in with vulnerable communities through environmental justice. Global warming is affecting the vulnerable populations who are disproportionately people of color. These populations contribute the least to the climate crisis. Current sustainability efforts include helping these vulnerable communities. One of the effects of global warming is refugees. And my interest with refugees has come back full circle. Natural disasters from climate change are displacing communities. There is conflict between the new arrivals and host communities as they compete for basic needs such as food and shelter. There's a fear of future wars across the world. We can't speak on environmental justice without addressing social justice. The TED Talk by David Lamy connects these topics. More clients are asking design firms to share their social justice efforts. It is now a business requirement and not just a morality option. Hence, more firms are searching for opportunities to help vulnerable communities. The wealthy communities who are the main contributors to climate crisis have gotten richer, while the vulnerable communities who are not benefiting from the wealth are the ones most at risk. My soul is fulfilled as an architect to see our industry, one that contributes high carbon footprint, is finally assisting these vulnerable communities. They say it starts at home. I learned the legacy of humanity from my father, who left his mark by selflessly helping people and communities. I passed on this legacy of humanity by raising a daughter who is a champion of social justice for Black people, leaving her mark since high school. She will move it forward to my grandchildren. I also left my mark by leaving legacy of humanity through volunteering and mentoring that I do professionally and personally. I am honored to be part of Wisco NOMA and the Women in Design group who are doing work to address vulnerable populations. And I look forward to more opportunities to leave my legacy of humanity with them. Please join me, everybody here, to leave your marks to the legacy of humanity for our children so they can move it forward to generations ahead. There will be more hope for a more peaceful, happy, and loving future. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Anina. Your story is very inspirational. It showed us how through perseverance and strength, we can all leave a legacy of humanity for future generations. Your work in advocating DEI initiatives in so many aspects of society is commendable and continues to inspire people such as myself. Thank you for your work. The next presenter is Teonna Cooksey. Teonna studied architecture, urban planning, and Africology at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is now studying architecture and urban planning at Columbia University, New York. Her work bridges the gap between city planning, design, and grassroots organizing. She focuses on environmental justice using an equity lens and questions how we can design better, more equitable environments that generate wealth within Black and Brown communities.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teonna Cooksey, and I am a Black woman in architecture. My trajectory in this field and in all of the things I involve myself with has been influenced by this identity. So I'm going to talk about my experience and my trajectory. This image I call views. I usually wake up early so I can get a good start on the day, and I thought the colors in this image were beautiful, so I took a picture. And then I realized how many things were obstructing my view. I thought about how this was a perfect representation of navigating the architecture field as a Black woman. First of all, this is a representation of my aesthetic influences. These are the kinds of things I see when I walk down the street, and growing up in this environment provided me with a unique lens to view the world. At times, a challenging one, but a beautiful one. Sometimes my environment gets chaotic and it becomes hard to focus or even move. So I look for peace and balance. This is one of my favorite places. This is my mom's garden, and she grows something different every single year. So it definitely has been something of an anchor for me. Speaking of peace and balance, I have to include my family because they keep me grounded and ambitious. They keep me moving forward and help me mitigate distractions. They support me even if they don't have the same interests that I do. And as I move forward, I try to bring them with me as much as I can, but they definitely support me. So moving forward away from my personal influences, undergrad was definitely one of my largest influences. This picture depicts the first group I started to organize with at UWM. It's called Africology Now, and it was my first time being around masses of Black people who were all ambitious, focused, and pushing the needle forward. As time passed, I needed to focus more on architecture because it's time consuming. So I shifted my organizing efforts to prioritize design. I have to create a pipeline, and I can't wait until the day where I claim to be extremely successful, although I'm gonna go ahead and claim that right now. But I've been able to work with some amazing people, and this is just a few of them. So this is me and some of my friends and some of my colleagues in the National Organization of Minority Architecture Students at UWM, and it was definitely something that helped me grow a lot. And then I graduated after 6 long years. And these are two of my mentors that throughout this journey have been extremely resourceful for me. They've guided me even when I didn't have a clue, and they taught me the value of mentorship. And as I continue to move forward, I always feel grateful to these people, and I still have connections with them. So even after graduating, I still built on the work that I started in undergrad with some of my mentors. So in 2009, right before COVID changed the world, and in the midst of my gap year, I represented the Buildings, Landscapes, Cultures Field School at the Humanities Action Lab International Convening in New York, New Jersey. Fast forward into my gap year, Wisco NOMA was started, and I'm so happy to say that I'm a part of its foundation. Being a part of Wisco NOMA for me was a natural progression after the experiences I had in NOMAS, the student chapter. So I plan to continue engaging with this organization because it definitely anchors me. Then I got into grad school, and I was so excited to start a dual degree program at Columbia University. It was a long journey, but during my gap year, I tested myself to see what I would gravitate towards. And I continued to work on myself, on my portfolio. So this combination was perfect for me. Columbia was perfect for me. And then reality hit. Columbia was the only school that accepted me and didn't offer me any money. It was also at least twice as much as all of the other schools that I got into, but I knew that this was the next step for me. I prayed about it, I meditated on it, and I truly believe that I'm fully funded. So I'm just gonna take a second to manifest that right now. Yeah, so then I got to work. I applied to almost every scholarship that passed my way, but as time moved on, I realized that your network really is your net worth. I secured more funding during the 2 weeks that I started to request meetings with people than I did in 3 months trying to apply for scholarships. So although I still have a long way to go, I would like to take a moment to thank the organizations that have supported me. And there are also a lot of people on this call who have supported me. So I just want to say that I appreciate you all, and I'm going to continue to do my work. So as I continue to work to make my education obtainable for myself, I'm going to continue advocating along the way. So recently I presented my undergraduate research at the Society of Architectural Historians, the virtual conference. The project is called the Women's Empowerment Network, Housing Redefined, and I want to turn this concept into reality. As I mentioned before, I'm currently in graduate school. So for the first year, I've been completing work in the urban planning program. And this is some of the work that I'm currently editing for finals. The studio is based in Culebra, Puerto Rico. So it's been interesting navigating an entirely different place. Regardless of what I'm working on or where I'm working, I will always emphasize justice and call out the real challenges, the ugly, political, and uncomfortable ones. I'll lay it out because I want to talk about it. I want to change it. So this is my aesthetic. And again, it continues to influence the way that I express my ideas, my thoughts, my fears, and my hopes. For this particular project, I propose developing a community land trust so that residents will have legal access to land titles and finally have homes that they deserve. So, and here's me living life and continuing to move forward with everything going on in the world. My identity provides me with grace, resilience, and power. I want to end my talk by sending out calm vibes, and I hope that everyone is doing well.
Thank you, Teonna. It's amazing how you've achieved so much at such a young age. You show us firsthand that we can accomplish anything if we put our minds to it. I've really enjoyed knowing you since your externship at Growth, and I continue to be amazed by all that you do in the field of architecture and as a champion of DEI initiatives in the profession. Thanks again. The next presenter is Shalini Nag. Dr. Shalini Nag is an entrepreneur and a people, performance, and organizational culture strategist. A #1 international best-selling author, international keynote speaker, and facilitator, Shalini creates inclusive, equitable workplaces and transforms individuals into exceptional professionals and leaders. Most recently, she has been named a top 20 coach in Milwaukee. Shalini has reinvented herself from scientist to management consultant to entrepreneur, speaker, and author. An avid traveler, currently living in her 5th hometown, Shalini's diverse personal experiences, blended with over 20 years of professional experiences, brings remarkable versatility and innovation to her work in business management, leadership, teamwork, and organizational culture. Creator of the Success Delta TM, Shalini has delivered measurable results at over 100 organizations worldwide. Shalini is an incorrigible optimist, a staminist, and a passionate advocate for equity and justice. She loves exploring new places, experiences, and cultures, solving puzzles, gardening, and handicrafts.
You were born fearless. If you don't believe me, Think back to when, as a child, someone tossed you up in the air, or you stood at the edge of a dive board above a pool for the first time. You felt those butterflies in your stomach, but you didn't call it nerves. You called it excitement, and you believed that you could fly. We are all born experimentalists, touching and tasting everything, soaking up a world of color, and dreaming of unlimited possibilities. If you're honest, the slides aren't moving, but if you're honest, each of us would admit that we wanted to be superheroes at some point. If we didn't, think about it. If we didn't, the icebreaker question, what's your superpower, would not have become as popular as it has. And then we hear the word stop. We are told, don't do that. This is unsafe. That's risky. Stop. That's not for you. It's too big. And when we begin to listen, slowly but surely, our doubts surface, our fears emerge, and they chip away at our dreams so they begin to fit. Today, I'm sharing with you my personal experiments with my dreams and fears. I was born in a small Indian town, Ranchi, at a time when patriarchy was alive and well. Boys were valued more and given more opportunities. But I lucked out because my mother was both brave and determined, and she absolutely decided that I would have every opportunity that my brother did. So in the midst of a society with clear gender disparities, where girls and women couldn't walk safely in the streets, I grew up precocious, reading my older brother's books, learning about faraway places and people, and dreaming big dreams, including one of creating a world where the genders were equal. If you're familiar with the concept of yin-yang, you know that every positive has a negative. The flip side of equal opportunities for me were equal expectations. So when I was envious of my brother's debate trophies, my mom said, if you want one, you go get one. So I entered a competition. On the day, my name is called, I step up, I say good morning, my mind goes completely blank and I ran off. But here's what mattered. I tried again and I kept working on it. And because I did, I'm here today as a speaker, sharing stories with you with 20 seconds every slide and actually enjoying myself doing this. Sometimes all we need is persistence and tenacity. Growing up in a small town in pre-internet India, there were two careers that were offered to me, be a doctor or be an engineer. I wanted to be neither. I wanted to be Jane Goodall and study chimps in Africa. Now, opportunities were one thing, but my mom also wanted to keep me safe. So Africa was out of the question. And of course, we couldn't afford it. So instead, I won a scholarship and went to Singapore to study biotechnology. Now, college is usually transformative, but this was exceptional for me. From small town to cosmopolitan city, into a new world of internet and email and online banking, new cultures and opportunities to travel. And in my travels, I learned an invaluable lesson. I was traveling alone in Taiwan and didn't speak any Taiwanese, shame on me. And at a train station, an older woman sat next to me who didn't speak any English. Yet within 15 minutes, she had found out that I was a student. She had found out I was traveling alone, and she had started buying me a snack so I wouldn't go hungry, and found a lady who was taking the train as me and asked her to keep an eye out for me. So often we hesitate to reach out to each other because we are afraid. But when two people really want to connect and put aside their fears, there are no barriers, not language or race or age or ethnicity. For the next one, I blame National Geographic completely. Watching their documentaries gave me a craving to dive at the Great Barrier Reef. When I found an Olympic pool at my university, I taught myself to swim. Then came scuba training. First time in the pool, I had a panic attack. I could not stay below. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. But I really wanted to visit the world that Finding Nemo had shown me. So I returned and I tried again. Not only did I get my certification, I actually saved my buddy's life on my first dive. And finally, in 2019, I dived at the Great Barrier Reef and met the full cast of Finding Nemo. When our desire and purpose exceed our fear, we become unstoppable. Which brings me to my biggest, baddest dream yet. I'm sure you're aware that gender equality is still a long way off, though we have made some progress. What I have learned over the years, however, is that we need not equality, but inclusion, access, and equity. And that too across many, many more dimensions than just gender. So my dream has grown with me. While I've been part of equity and mentoring organizations all of my life, my experience as a helpline for abused women at Aware Singapore was pivotal. I observed repeatedly how if we aren't careful, we can easily internalize negative messaging, especially when it is delivered consistently over prolonged periods. As a child, I reproached older boys for breaking our windows. They called me Foolan Devi, a bandit similar to the highwaymen of the Old West. As a child confident in myself, I was actually proud of it. But when I kept hearing again and again the labels that are often applied to women, whether it is in academia or in corporate America, intimidating, opinionated, bossy, I found myself beginning to chip away at myself and shrinking. And unfortunately, the bigger my fears got, the smaller my impact became. And it is then that I was grateful for the fact that I had that experience at Aware, because I noticed this change happening. And I decided it was enough. It was time that I was bigger than my fear. It was time I called the shots, not my fear. It was time I was the adult in the room. And so now I have broken free with these 3 lessons that I just shared that I stand by. Sometimes all we need is persistence and tenacity. When people choose to connect, there can be no barriers. And when our purpose is bigger than our fear, we become unstoppable. Today, as an entrepreneur and as a people performance and culture strategist at EvidaSolve, my life and my work, my vocation and passion are interwoven. Through my books or my consulting, talks or trainings, I continue to work to build the world that I once dreamed of. And I hope that I can empower others to break free as well, so they can lead, connect, and thrive fearlessly. Thank you for letting me speak here today.
Thank you, Shalini. Your journey from scientist to entrepreneur to DEI coach is unique and exceptional. Your presentation gives me hope for the future, seeing that there are motivated individuals and thought leaders like you working to create awareness and opportunities for a more equitable work environment. Now, so that is actually the end of our presentation. So can we please have a virtual round of applause for our inspiring speakers tonight? Even with some technical issues and way too many emails from me, these presenters were able to show you and showcase what they are working on. I want to thank each presenter tonight for taking the time to speak about their experiences. I know I got goosebumps from every presentation, and I hope they understand how much their efforts have inspired me and countless others. These women have all done amazing things, but the work of pushing for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the design field is not done. These presenters have truly made their mark in the profession, and I cannot wait to see what these amazing women do in their future. If you enjoyed the presentation tonight, please sign up for our next Women in Design Fireside Chat, Real Stories from Real Leaders. This event is an interactive question and answer event where you, the audience, actually become the moderator. We want to say thank you for taking the time to attend this event tonight. Women in Design strive to make our events free to the public so that anyone from intern to partner can attend and network with a supportive group of professionals. We could not continue our work advocating for equity in the design profession without the kind donations from professionals and firms. If you love this event and want to see us continuing free programming, hopefully in person with free food, please go to our website and donate at widmilwaukee.com/donate to WID. Every dollar you donate helps us create opportunities to improve the network of supportive professionals in Milwaukee and further. We are looking forward to the future of having in-person events again, and I hope to see you all in person soon. We are now going to split the attendees into breakout rooms, so you will be able to speak with the presenters and other professionals in there. You will be able to choose which room you want to attend. See the link in the chat, and you can decide where you want to go and network. So you can talk with these other people. We will actually be cutting off the chat after 15 minutes. So make sure that you get your questions answered there. I hope you all had an amazing night, and I cannot wait to see you all at our next event. And I hope that everyone keeps striving to improve the design workplace. Thank you, and have a good night.